Hi everyone. So I wanted to provide a little bit more background and instruction today. I'm going to try something new. Okay. I'm going to walk you through our next poet. We're going to read her poem together, and I'm going to provide a very brief analysis as well. Okay. So hopefully this will help you guys out. The next poet that we're going to talk about is Helene Johnson. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit of a biography about her, and I've also highlighted some of the important notes down here on the bottom underneath her picture. Okay, so meet Helene Johnson. When she was 19, Helene traveled from her hometown of Boston to New York City to accept her first poetry award. She had received an honorable mention in the annual poetry contest for the popular African American magazine called Opportunity. Once Johnson saw and experienced New York City at the height of the Harlem Renaissance, she decided to stay. When Johnson first moved to New York City, she lived in one of the few apartment buildings outside Harlem that rented to African Americans. She quickly became friends with the only other African American woman in the building, famed Harlem Renaissance writer Zora Neale Hurston. So we've read a little bit about Zora Neale Hurston, right? Alice Walker had said that she was a mountain of a woman, right? Of a human, really. And so she was friends with Helene Johnson. Okay, so that's important to keep note of, right? That these women were fierce individualists. Okay, I'm going to continue here. Before long, Johnson was socializing with Harlem's literary elite, as I include on my document in front of you. Today, Johnson is remembered as one of the youngest and most promising writers of the Harlem Renaissance, a woman who was very proud of her cultural heritage and exhibited strong concern for life in Harlem. And before we jump in here to the poem, I want to give you some background, not only on the time and place, but also on Helene Johnson's literary influences. So I'm going to start with the time and place, and this is very quick. But basically, Harlem was known as a ghetto in the 20s and 30s, right? So, despite its overcrowding and poverty, Harlem's African American residents found much better housing than anywhere else in New York City. In her poetry, Johnson wanted to reflect the mere modest and everyday realities that African Americans were experiencing within Harlem. Okay, so that's kind of important going into this poem. And then also, I wanted to talk a little bit about her literary influences. So her education and family strongly influenced her. She counted the British poets Alfred Lord Tennyson and Percy Shelley, and American poets Walt Whitman, Carl Sandburg, among her favorites. Johnson also received inspiration and support from her cousin, the writer Dorothy West, who moved with Johnson to New York and became an editor of a magazine called The Challenge. Okay, so before we jump into her poem, which is called A Sonnet to a Negro in Harlem, um, since the title is telling us that it is a sonnet, I just wanted to review what we already have gone over, okay? A sonnet is a 14-line poem. It means in Italian, it comes from the Italian word sonetto, okay, which means little song, and it typically is about love, okay? That's important to know. Now, there are two types of sonnets, as we've discussed. There's the Petrarchian sonnet. Sometimes we call this sonnet an Italian sonnet, and it's made up of an octave and a sestet. Okay, so you can see one variation of the rhyme scheme, ABBA. Sometimes it's ABBA again, or it could be CDDC. And then the sestet here is CDE, CDE. Okay. Now, the Shakespearean or English sonnet is made up of three quatrains, meaning there are three paragraphs or stanzas of 4 lines each. So we have the first quatrain is A, B, A, B. The second quatrain is C, D, C, D. The third quatrain is E, F, E, F. And the rhyming couplet at the very end is usually G, G. Okay? So moving ahead, you're going to identify right off the bat what type of sonnet this is. Okay, so just looking at the rhyme scheme, okay, you can tell that this is a Petrarchian sonnet right off the bat, okay? So I am going to first do a cold read before I do a very quick analysis. So I'm not going to get too deep into the poem, but I do want to just talk about some things. So Sonnet to a Negro in Harlem by Helene Johnson. You are disdainful and magnificent. Your perfect body and your pompous gait, your dark eyes flashing solemnly with hate. Small wonder that you are incompetent to imitate those whom you so despise. Your shoulders towering high above the throng, your head thrown back in rich, barbaric song. Palm trees and mangoes stretched before your eyes. Let others toil and sweat for labor's sake, and wring from grasping hands their meed of gold. Why urge ahead your supercilious feet? Scorn will efface each footprint that you make. I love your laughter, arrogant and bold. You are too splendid for this city street. Okay, and so again, just to reiterate here, I'm going to go over the rhyme scheme. Magnificent, okay, rhymes with incompetent. Okay, gate rhymes with hate. Okay, so we have A, B, B, A, right? Despise rhymes with I. Wrong rhymes with song. Okay, now I would say that this is the octave. So A, B, B, A, C, D, D, C. Okay, now there's a shift in the poem, and this would be the sestet. This would be the volta where the shift happens. And the next rhyme, sake, rhymes with what? Make. Okay, E, E. Okay, I did this wrong. Sorry, bear with me, guys. Okay, gold. I'm running out of colors here. Gold rhymes with bold. And obviously feet rhymes with street. So this would be A, B, A, F, G, E, F. Okay, sorry, I know that that's a little time consuming, but I think hopefully if you didn't understand rhyme scheme, you understand it now. And moving ahead, so we're going to start off with the first line. You, second person here, we're talking to some subject, are disdainful and magnificent. So if you look down at the footnote, if you didn't know what disdain was, it means full of scorn. Scorn is anger, right? So those two words or adjectives are opposites, right? To be full of anger does not seem magnificent, right? So this is what we would call a paradox, okay? Your perfect body and your pompous gait, okay? Pompous is a vocabulary word meaning arrogant, right? Having exaggerated sense of self-importance. Gait is the way that this person is walking, okay? So we're just complimenting or admiring the subject of the poem here. or I shouldn't say we are, we should say the speaker of the poem is admiring the subject of the poem. We continue to admire the subject of the poem, saying, "Your dark eyes flashing solemnly with hate." Okay, we have a vivid visual here. Eyes are flashing with hate. Small wonder that you are incompetent to imitate those whom you so despise. Who do you imagine the speaker is talking about? Who is the subject hating here? Arguably, white people, okay? And the subject of the poem seems to refuse to want to imitate white behavior, okay? And this word here too, incompetent, it's kind of ironic, right? You would think of somebody who is incompetent as being unable to do that, and that would be a negative thing. But here, Johnson is using this word, so the choice of words, the diction, is very important because it lends itself to the tone, which is arguably admirable irony. Okay, let's continue. Your shoulders towering high above the throng. This person is clearly not only tall, but also powerful. He or she is standing out from everyone else, right? The throng of people is kind of like the masses, okay? Your head thrown back in rich barbaric song, right? We tend to think of somebody who is not ashamed of singing, right? As very proud and confident, right? So we get an understanding of the subject here is probably very confident. I also like this idea of it being a barbaric song, which is oftentimes maybe not thought of in a positive way, but here it is of admiration to the speaker. We continue in line 7. Palm trees and mangoes stretched before your eyes. Now, are palm trees and mangoes literally stretched before the subject's eyes? This is a figurative line, and it implies much more than, you know, what is actually being said here. Okay, so palm trees and mangoes are things that remind you of a tropic location. Okay. So this person's eyes do not harbor maybe the drudgery of the city. Okay. We'll get to the end of the poem soon. Okay. But this person's eyes kind of reflect a more tropical setting, which is much more pleasant in comparison to Harlem, where we can imagine this person is residing. Okay. The speaker goes on in line 9. Let others toil and sweat for labor's sake. Okay. And wring from grasping hands their meed of gold. If you look in the footnote, meed is a well-deserved compensation or payment. This subject of the poem doesn't seem to have ambition to attain gold and wealth like everyone else. And so she says, let others, go out and work hard and make money. Okay. Why urge ahead your supercilious feet? Why would you need to do anything other than be who you are, where you are, since you're so perfect, right? Since you're so powerful and lovely. And this complacency is, again, ironic. You would typically think of ambition as being a positive and complacency as being a negative. But it's admirable here because of the way that society is, right? This person is going to shun or turn away from the status quo and what everyone else is doing in an effort to be who he is. And again, that's what the Harlem Renaissance was all about, right? It was all about asserting, hey, this is who I am, and that is enough. Okay. And then I love this last part here. Okay, well, we have to get to line 12 first. Scorn, which is anger, will efface, which means vocabulary word, rub away from each footprint that you make. Okay, the anger is going to wipe away whatever mark this person leaves. All right. I love your laughter, arrogant and bold. So the speaker, I keep being tempted to say she because Helene Johnson wrote the poem, but we don't know whether the speaker is a male or a woman. And so you cannot assume gender here, just like in today's society, we should not assume gender either. I love your laughter, arrogant and bold, right? Again, kind of ironic. We don't typically think of a person's arrogant laughter as something admirable here. Okay, finally, you are too splendid for this city street. You are much better than this setting, is ultimately what she's saying. Okay, so I think I touched upon some important things here. I have one last question that I would like to leave you with before I sign out, and that is the subject of this poem a single person or is it a group of people? Are we talking about a single, maybe man, okay, or a woman, or are we talking about African Americans as a group of people within a white society? So you can let me know what you think about that. I hope this analysis helped you so that you didn't just have to read it on your own as you have been for the last couple of days. Okay, everyone? Let me know if this helped at not or at all, and I can continue doing this in the future if it did. So just let me know. All right, have a good day, everyone.